Oh, it's okay. We record this meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We have to just ask that before every meeting. All righty then. Okay, so obviously, all right. So if you're gonna sit there, I'll just
I can come sit over there.
yeah. Oh yeah. Better. Even better. Whatever rocks your boat works. All righty. So welcome everybody to another. Oh, I always forget to do that because it always pops up on that. Make sure I was able to see the screen all right. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to a very special Beta Alpha Psi meeting. Today we have the privilege of co-hosting this meeting, in particular with the Student Managed Investment Fund. We do have some of our members here in person and also virtually. And for today, we have Matt Della Croce from UBS to come speak to us today. So the way this meeting is going to work, it's a little different. Usually than our other meetings, where we usually gone for an hour long. It's going to be split down the middle, 50-50. So the first 30 minutes, it's going to basically be UBS career-wise, usually what we talk about in BAP. And then the last 30 minutes, we're going to talk about our student managed investment fund portfolio that we're going to pull up. Obviously, I have given Matt the portfolio ahead of time. So obviously he knows what holdings we hold. We'll give us advice on what we need to maybe look into more, what we don't need to look into. And again, if you guys have any questions, comments, please feel free. We want to make this conversational as possible. So Matt, I will let you take it from here then.
Awesome. All right, so I'm talking in this. This is where they're all hearing from.
You're talking from here, because we do have people from Metro also on here. Okay. So basically, you look up here, look up there. All right.
All right. Hello, everybody. So this is, so I'm going to just say one thing. I typically, when I do these discussions, I like to keep them a little bit more, I'd say, non-traditional than normal. I just want to make sure everybody, you guys can all hear me good? Okay, awesome. Thank you, Joe. So as opposed to this being more so me lecturing and presenting, I'm going to give a little bit of background on myself, how I got to where I am, and I'll give you some details on the different roles that I had done. I'll talk about UBS. I'll talk about some opportunities within UBS. I'll give a couple general pieces of advice that I think would be helpful for some folks on here. And then to be quite honest, if it's all right with you, Jack, I mean, I don't think we need more than like 10 minutes or so just to go over the portfolio. I took a look at it. Like I told you on the phone earlier, all right, everybody, if you show a perfect quote unquote portfolio to 10 different people, everybody can always have something to say about it. So I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on that. It doesn't look bad at all. There's one or two things I'll bring up just to reference UBS research on it. But I want this to be conversational. I don't want to just talk to everybody and I find that to be boring. I want you guys to get as much use of this as you can. Ask questions. I have the Zoom screen in front of me, so I'm trying to make sure I look at everybody, but feel free to just throw your hand up. I think it'll just show a hand at the top of the screen here, right? If somebody has a question. So please don't hesitate to interrupt, ask as many questions as you guys want. Do not feel like you're asking any stupid questions. I want this to be informal. I want it to be helpful. And I want this to be a space for you guys to ask questions that maybe you feel uncomfortable asking to other people, or maybe you can't look up the answer to online or whatever it might be. So please throw your hand up and ask. But to kick this off here, so I'm Matt Della Croce. I've been with UBS for a little bit over 7 years now. I joined right out of college. I was hired as a temp CSA. Even before that, so I'll tell you guys, I probably sent my resume to maybe 1,000 places when I graduated. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I spoke to everybody that was willing to speak to me. The titles so I've probably gone through maybe 5 positions while at UBS as I've gotten promoted through the years. I don't think I knew the name of one of those. I knew the name of one title when I graduated college. That was financial advisor. All the other positions that I held, I had no idea. I didn't even know they existed when I was in school. So the reason I tell you guys that is because you don't feel like you need to know what you want to do and where you want to be right now, especially those of you that are freshmen, sophomore, juniors, if there's any of you on this call here. The seniors, maybe you can feel a little bit more pressure. But again, I don't think any of you need to know what it is that you want to do at this point in time. By no means. I think you should have some ideas as to what interests you. And maybe if you do know what you want, that's great. If you know what you don't want, even better. But I think there's going to be roles and there's going to be positions that you all don't even know exist. So just keep that in mind. But I was hired for UBS as a temp CSA. So what that meant is I was hourly paid. I did not have job security. And when you're hired as a temp, you can essentially be let go at any point in time with pretty much no reasoning. I was given 120 days to get fully licensed. So Series 7 and Series 66, but now it's SIE Series 7, Series 66. And my job was contingent on me getting licensed within 120 days. If not, I was fired. And it's fun because you had to work a full-time job and you also had to study. So you had to make sure you were excelling in your career. You had to make sure you were putting in the necessary time that you needed to pass the exams, and also had to manage any bit of a social life that I had left after doing the other two. So I was brought on as a temporary CSA, and I worked for what was called the estate team. So imagine working for a team that every time a client of UBS dies, it comes to you. And I was responsible for dealing with their family members and pretty much just making sure that the people who are in line to get the assets got their assets. So quite fun conversations, right? When a client would call and say, hey, my dad passed away, send me a check for his whole account. We have funeral expenses, we have bills and debt that we have to pay. And I had to be the lucky one to tell them that actually you can't get the money right away. You have to go through this process and sign all this paperwork and submit for all these approvals before you can get the money. So that was a fun job. I did that for about 2 years. So I was in a role called the CSA, so Client Service Associate, and I'm going to try to explain like the hierarchy of how this all works in just a minute. But I was CSA for 2 years. After doing that, I was moved into a financial advisor role. So I was a producing financial advisor. I did that for about 3 years, and I'll talk about what each role kind of does in detail in a moment. So after I was an advisor for a couple of years, I was tapped on to be a training manager. So 2022, I was a training manager. So I was responsible for interviewing, hiring, onboarding, and training everybody that came into UBS. We had classes. So I'll talk about this also in a couple of moments, but we onboard quarterly. So we onboard anywhere between 40 and 80 people per quarter. At the start of every quarter, we now have a decentralized model, meaning it's not just in Weehawken, it's all over the country. So I was responsible for building out the training program there. And then I was a sales manager last year. So I was managing financial advisors, making sure they hit their goals and they're bringing in new money and they're producing. And in November of last year, I joined the Manhattan market, where I'm a branch admin manager for our Manhattan Private Wealth division. I'll talk about that in just a moment as well. So as you can tell, I've been with the firm 7 years. I've gone through various different roles and again, had no idea what any of them meant 7 years ago. So to give you all some kind of structure as to, I think I spoke about the CSA role a little bit. So as a financial advisor, the main part of that role is to sell yourself, sell your brand, bring in new business to the firm. A lot of people, when they think of the role of financial advisor, they think, or at least what I thought of was like, oh, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to seem like I'm being a shark at all. Right. I don't like to push people. But what you have to understand is that you're not selling people, a product they're not going to use, or you're not selling them a sponge or solar panels, whatever it might be. Right. You're selling them on managing their money. And as long as you have confidence in yourself and your firm that you know what is going on, there's really no selling involved. It's more so helping out a client and helping out the people. So UBS takes a big stance on delivering what we call like a white glove client experience, whether you have $1 million or if you have $2 billion, right? I think it's important that you understand that every client and every asset level plays a very crucial part in the role. So I want to talk about what I had done for the first 6 years, because I think that's going to be most relevant for everybody on this call and everybody in here. And then I'm going to talk about my more recent role. So UBS, we have what's called our branch office locations, right? Our brick and mortar branches. Those are Manhattan, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, LA, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, right? Those are the cities. If you drive down the street, you see a giant UBS logo on a building. Those are what's called our local branches. The typical asset threshold for those branches is anywhere between $5 million and above. The private wealth households are usually $20 million and above, but within those branches, there can be both wealth management and there can be private wealth. We also have our headquarters, which is in Weehawken. That's the headquarters for the US, and that's where I worked for the majority of my UBS career so far. So the headquarters of UBS focuses on what's called the emerging affluent or the core affluent part of the business space. So what that means is pretty much 5 million and below goes to the Wealth Advice Center over in Weehawken, which is where I was. 5 million and up is supposed to be transitioned to the field, which is any brick and mortar branch location. So the Wealth Advice Center is, I think, where most of you on this call and most of you in here are going to have, I think, is going to be most impactful for you all. So the Wealth Advice Center is what's referred to as like the incubator for the whole UBS firm. Everybody that gets hired into UBS, with a couple exceptions aside, is supposed to go through the Wealth Advice Center before they can get placed out into the field, into our private wealth teams and our wealth management teams. The Wealth Advice Center is it's a 3-year commitment from when you join, and it essentially allows you all, it sponsors you all for your exams. So the SIE, the Series 7, the Series 66. They pay for the exams, they sponsor them. They allow you 2 hours a day, sometimes more, but at least 2 hours a day every single day to study. So you're getting paid to study while you're in the training program. And you also will have the hand holding that is necessary in order to develop a skill set, right? Everybody, when they think of working in finance and they think of being a financial advisor, they think of the sexy role of making recommendations and picking stocks and talking to clients about their portfolios, which is part of the role. But in order to be a successful financial advisor, you need to have a strong service background, right? Good luck talking to a client and winning over their $50 million business sale if you can't talk about doing a simple IRA roll, or you can't talk about sending a check or sending a wire, or how long it's going to take if they call you and say, hey, Matt, I need $20 million tomorrow, or how long is that going to take? So you need to be able to talk to those things in order to be a successful financial advisor. It's not the cool part of the job, but it is. I think if I had never been a CSA in my first 2 years, which to me was so stressful, and at the time I was thinking like, oh man, how is this job ever going to help me? I'm doing all service work. I want to be an advisor. I'm fully licensed. Like, I'm wasting away here. If I had never done that job, I don't think I would have had any success as a financial advisor, because when I became a financial advisor, all of these people that were hired directly into an advisor, at the time we were hiring people directly into financial advisor roles. We weren't making them go through the training program. So all these people that were hired into the advisor role were just stale for a year or 2 years and not progressing at all because they had no service background. So although I thought I wasted away for 2 years being a CSA, that helped me lap everybody once I became a financial advisor, because I knew the ins and outs of all of our systems. I knew to talk to any service. I'd never had to put a client on hold. I never had to say, oh, I'm not too sure. And if I did, I'd be able to send a quick ping to somebody and get an answer right away. Right. So it allows you to speak more confidently. Clients take you more serious, and it just makes you a well-rounded advisor. That's it. So the Wealth Advice Center, it's a 3-year commitment when you join. The first 45 days, it is what we call a boot camp style of training. So your full day is mapped out for you from the minute you come into the building at 8:30 to the minute you leave at 5:30 or 5:45, whenever you decide to leave, right? Your day is mapped out from trainings in the morning. Then you'll be doing mock in person of whatever you had done training on. So in the morning, if you had done training on how to send wires or how to host review conversations with clients, later in the day, you'll be doing that live, whether you're sending real wires out of client accounts or you're sending mock wires or things like that. The Wealth Advice Center provides, like I said earlier, hand holding, where if you want to join the field, right? If you say, if I ask any of you that want to work in finance, say, hey, what do you want to do? Right? I want to join a private wealth team and I want to work with ultra high net worth clients. It's typically the answer a lot of people say. If you go and you sit down in front of a $1 billion client and you send a wire for him and you mess it up, I think most of you can probably imagine how that's going to go. If you do that in the Wealth Advice Center, not that you can just go mess up willy-nilly, right? But there's so many layers put into place that, number one, even if you mess up, your error is caught way before it happens, right? But there's certain approvals that have to go through management and then have to go through operations before something is sent out of the account. But even if you do mess up, it's a lot more. Number one, it's going to be with a smaller client, right? At max, it's going to be with a $5 million client, which is when you're newer, they're probably $1 million and below. But there's training managers, there's coaches, there's mentors that are assigned to all of you that are going to be able to sit you down and say, hey, Jack, here's what was supposed to happen. Here's what you did. Do you understand this? Ask me questions, right? Let's make sure you really understand what happened here. If you do that in the field with a billion-dollar client, I think people are going to be a lot less taking to it than they would in the Wealth Advice Center. So I grew up professionally in the Wealth Advice Center. I was hired there. I had zero connections, which I'll talk about later on. But in the Wealth Advice Center in Weehawken, which is where that's located, by the way, you are essentially, like I said, right? Your hand is held from the day you get brought on to the day you graduate the training program. And you're taught every step along the way, from how to log on, how to use your email, how to send professional emails, how to send wires, how to place trades, how to have review conversations, how to make recommendations to clients. All of that is taught to you in a classroom style setting, and then it's done live. So for anybody in here that wants to get into finance, I would recommend looking into the Wealth Advice Center. I could not recommend it strongly enough. They onboard quarterly. So we're coming up on our April class right now, which is definitely set up. You know, like all that class is definitely filled. So the next class is going to be our July class. That's going to be usually our biggest class, between 80 and 100 onboards, because it's the college graduate class. Everybody mostly graduates in May. You get onboarded, you start in July. So I would start speaking or start reaching out to people as soon as possible. There's a gentleman who runs the training and development in the Wealth Advice Center. His name is Justin Trubin. If any of you decide it's something that you're interested in, I would strongly recommend reaching out to Justin Trubin, whether it's through LinkedIn, or if you find him on any other website, you can probably find him like the UBS Careers as well. But strongly recommend the Wealth Advice Center and reaching out to Justin. The way it works there, so I'll talk a little bit more about career progression. So you'll start 45 days bootcamp style training. After you finish the training, you'll be studying along the way as well. You'll then be live on the phones, right? It's a phone-based business. So when you're in the Wealth Advice Center, you're not really sitting, or you're not having face-to-face client meetings yet. It's all done over the phone, which is, at the time, I was thinking that I wanted client meetings, but if you think of it, right, you're 21, 22, 23 years old. If you sat across a client who had $20 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever it is, they're probably not going to take you too serious, regardless of how smart you are, right? So it's I think beneficial in that it's a phone-based business, because it allows you to just focus on what's being said and what's the work that's in front of you, right? And opposed to appearance. Anybody have any questions before I continue rambling? I want to talk a little bit more about the training program. Any questions at all? Anything I could clarify for you guys or girls, if there's any on here? Anyone? All good? All right, I'll keep running. Again, just throw your hands up if you have any questions. So after the training program, what you're going to do is you're going to be live on the phones, and you're going to be placed on what's called our opportunity identification team. So sounds really fancy, but it's exactly what you imagine it to be. You're speaking to clients and you're identifying where there's opportunity. If a client calls you, we're going to teach you how to look out for certain like triggers that are going to train you to get them to an advisor. So for your first year that you're live, you're doing opportunity identification. You're talking to clients, you're handling disbursements, whatever it might be, handling service requests, and then figuring out when you can get them to speak to a financial advisor for further opportunities, right? If a client calls you and says, hey, Jack, I just retired from my job. I have money at UBS. I want to update my employment information, right? You just retired from your job, or you just switched your job. We're going to train you to think, oh, okay, so you might have a 401k that's now inactive, right? What are you going to do with that 401k? Do you want to move it over to UBS? Have you spoke to an advisor about it, right? You might have someone say, hey, I just sold my house. I need to wire money into my account, or I need you guys to wire me money. That's going to trigger a red flag. Hey, did you upsize? Did you downsize? Do you have a certain, was your mortgage paid off? Do you now have a chunk of money, $500,000, $1 million that you're sitting on? Whether or not somebody's parents just died, right? My mother or my father just died. I need some money to pay for their funeral. Now, you know, there's probably an inheritance that's coming sometime soon. So the point of that team is for you to handle service, but also now understand how a financial advisor thinks and when there's going to be opportunity or when there could be opportunity. After you do that for roughly 18 months or so, as long as you're hitting your metrics and doing what you're supposed to, you'll be promoted into a financial advisor role, which now you're in production. Right now you're live. Yes.
We talked about metrics.
Yes.
What sort of?
Great question. So the metrics that are measured are usually net new assets. So as a financial advisor, the number one most important thing is net new assets. Their main goal as an advisor is to prospect, is to bring new business into UBS that wasn't in UBS. So as I referenced before, right, if a client calls in and they say, hey, Matt, right, I just got a new job. I worked for Etsy for the last 15 years. Now I'm working for Texas Instruments, right? You now are going to start thinking, you used to work for Etsy. Right? Do you have stock options? Do you have a 401k? Do you have an IRA? Do you have anything set up through them that's now going to be inactive because you're not with that company anymore? And your goal is to bring those assets over. So that's the number one metric that's judged. The next metric is production. When I use the term production, how can I best explain this? So financial advisors are not stock pickers. A stock picker is really like a financial advisor's like biggest nightmare. You don't want a client that's going to call you and say, hey, Matt, what are the hottest stocks on the market? I want to buy and sell this. I want to buy and sell this. Right? And they call you 5 times a day. You don't want that. As an advisor, like, yes, you'll make some commissions off of it. But as a financial advisor, you want somebody that's going to trust you to manage their assets, right? So there's a term in wealth management it's called AUM, so assets under management. And then how much of that AUM is wrapped. So when you hear the term wrapped in financial advising, that means how much of it is the client telling you, hey, Matt, here's $5 million. I have no idea what I'm doing. Take care of this for me. And that the advisor say, hey, I'll charge you 1%, 2%, whatever it is, right? The advisor and the client are going to agree upon a fee. So the assets under management that's wrapped, that's what's referred to as production, right? That's how an advisor gets paid for the most part. There's other ways. But if a financial advisor has a book of business that's worth $1 billion and none of it is wrapped, he or she can make less money than a financial advisor who has $200 million under management, but all of it is wrapped, right? So does that make sense for you all, right? So that's the name of the game in being an advisor, is having assets that are wrapped. Again, you can have $5 billion under management, none of it is wrapped. You're going to get paid less money than a client who has 200 million, but has the whole book of business wrapped. So production and net new assets are the two biggest metrics that are tracked. Smaller metrics are things like banking and deepening, we refer to it as. So how many clients have mortgages with UBS? How many clients have SBL, so security-backed loans, credit cards, things like that. That's how the firm also makes money. But great question. Thank you.
What was the success rate?
Success rate for the training program or
Clients, production.
so I think a lot of that depends on the advisor, and depends on how many, so we refer to it as touches, right? Like being a financial advisor, especially in the Wealth Advice Center, it's a game of numbers, right? Like nobody there is a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon. It's the people who work the hardest and who make the most touches are going to be the most successful, end of the day. So if I sit next to you and I call 10 clients a day and you call 30 clients a day, I can bet any amount of money by the end of the quarter, your production is going to crush mine simply because of numbers, right? Like you might do more service because you're calling more people and you're talking to more clients, but you're definitely going to have more business closed than I do, just because it's a game of numbers. The more people you talk to, the more business you're going to close. I don't think there's an exact number of success rate for closing business. But every quarter when we look at our top performers, it's the people who speak to the most clients that are the biggest performers every quarter for as long as I've been there.
So how do you identify those clients?
Yeah. Great question. So in the Wealth Advice Center, you don't cold call any clients. You never cold call anybody. In the Wealth Advice Center, every client that you speak to is already with UBS. They have money with UBS. And there's 2 ways you're going to speak to them. Number one, they're going to call you. We have about, I think, 300,000 clients in the Wealth Advice Center. So 300,000 people, somebody's always calling you, believe me. They're going to call you. And then we also target specific demographics. We call them campaigns of people to reach out to. So we're going to take our 200 advisors that we have, and we're going to download a giant list of clients from our 300,000 clients book of business. And we're going to say, hey, you've all been assigned 150 clients or 50 clients or 20 clients that are that have CDs or bonds that are maturing within the next month. Call them and set a plan. You're all signed 100 accounts that are IRA accounts that have more than 10% cash holdings in there, which for those of you that don't know, an IRA account has tax-free growth. That's one of the main benefits of it. So you want no cash in IRA. You want it to grow as much as you can, because when you sell it, right, if you bought Apple stock at $5 and you sell it at 100, there's $95 of gains. If you do that in an RMA or brokerage, you're taxed on the $95 of gains. If you do it in an IRA, you're not taxed on any gains. You're only taxed on your full money. So we target specific demographics: IRA, cash, concentration, or concentrated stock, CDs maturing, anything like that. A no contact campaign, call, clients you haven't spoken to in a year or so. So you're given clients, and if you run out of clients that you've been given, you can just answer there's a phone state where you can go available. So if a client calls, it comes to you, and generate leads that way as well. Great questions. Yeah. You had one back there?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Sorry about that. I should have went more in depth on that. So, an assets that are wrapped are what I was kind of alluding to before. It means that the financial advisor is taking care of that account. So you can have, right, think of it as two buckets: wrapped and unwrapped, right? So say a client has $1 million with you, 750,000 of it is wrapped, 250 is not wrapped. So the 250 that's not wrapped, that money it's what's called self-directed. So the 250 that's not wrapped, the client has to initiate any changes, right? So if they have 10 different stocks and they want to sell 2 and buy another 2, the client has to call you and say, hey, Matt, sell Apple, sell Google, buy NVIDIA, buy Amazon. That's the not wrapped assets. Yes, unwrapped. The assets that are wrapped, the financial advisor usually has what's called discretion over the account. So that means the client signed paperwork that says, I'm giving this FA discretion to take care of this account on my behalf, so that the FA doesn't have to call every client to confirm every trade, right? They're now managing the assets for the client and charging them a 1% or 75 basis points fee. The thing to know about wrapped accounts is, so number one, full discretion, usually. So the advisor will take care of the account without calling the client. It makes it easier for everybody. Sometimes the client will still want to get that phone call. But advisors usually have what's called model portfolios. So if you think about a financial advisor that has 5,000 clients, it's not feasible to say that this advisor is going to look at every single account every single day and make manual trades every single day to rebalance the account. So what they do is they have model portfolios. Some advisors have more than others. Some advisors change them more than others, but you'll pretty much have, I don't know, let's call it 10, for example, right? 10 model portfolios. Here's an income portfolio. Here's a growth portfolio. Here's a balanced portfolio. Here's a moderate portfolio. Here's an aggressive portfolio. And you'll have 10 different portfolios. And that advisor will manage those portfolios and say, hey, in my growth portfolio, I'm going to trim Tesla and I'm going to add to my Amazon position. So now every client that's invested in that growth strategy is going to get their Tesla trimmed and their Amazon position grown. So it gives them a way to put clients into buckets and make sure that every client is being helped without having to call 5,000 people a day if you want to rebalance a portfolio. Does that make sense to you guys? Awesome. Good question. Yeah. Any other questions on Zoom or anything? Just want to make sure before I go forward, or anyone in here? All good? All right, sweet. So where to leave off at? I think I was talking about being a financial advisor, right? And things like that. Okay. So I spoke a lot about the Wealth Advice Center. I mean, how are we doing on time? Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about the Manhattan market now, and then we can look at the portfolio in maybe 10 minutes or so. So I want to talk a little bit about the Manhattan market. So the Manhattan market is where I am right now. On paper, I joined in January of this year. I've been there since November of last year. It is the largest market in the firm and in the entire world for UBS. Last year, we had $230 billion of assets under management within the Manhattan market. We did $1.8 billion in revenue. And year to date, we've brought in just shy of $4 billion, and we're going into, not even in April yet. So when I say the term revenue, just so you guys know, I want to make sure everybody understands that. Revenue is going back to my point earlier of talking about assets under management. So think about if I'll use simple numbers, right? So say we have a $100,000 account. If an advisor charges a client 1% a year to manage the account, that's $3,000 every year that the firm makes from that account, right? It's $100,000. We charge them, I'm sorry, $100,000. We charge them 1%. That's $1,000 a year that the firm makes from that account. So think of that on a scale of $1 billion and $10 billion, right? That's what the term that's called revenue, right? So although you have $1 billion in assets, right? If none of it's wrapped, you have a ton of money, but you're not making the firm any money, right? Maybe the firm can lend and make some money like that, but the firm isn't getting production from that money. So when you hear the term revenue, that is really how a financial advisor is judged. Assets under management are very important, but as I've said multiple times, assets under management can virtually mean nothing if the assets aren't wrapped and if the assets aren't producing money, whether it's through loans, through credit lines, through wrapped assets. So the term revenue is extremely important when talking about financial advisors, because again, just because some advisor has 10 times the amount of assets, he could still make less money than another advisor that has significantly less assets in them. So the term revenue, just think about the money that they have and how it's producing money for the firm, $1,000 a year, $1 million a year, whatever it might be. So the Manhattan market, $230 billion in assets, $1.8 billion in revenue. That is, right, if you want to be in finance and if you want to be in the city, right, the Manhattan market is growing. I think UBS, I couldn't think of a better firm to be at. I understand that some people, I think, don't like larger firms because you can get lost. You can just be a number of 100,000 people. But our market director, he has a term he likes to say, if you can't find a role that's for you in UBS, then maybe it's not the company, maybe it's you, right? Because there's anything. You can be an analyst, you can work in supervision, you can work in compliance, you could be a financial advisor, you could be a manager, you can be literally anything in the whole firm. So being in a big firm, I prefer, because there's a large ecosystem. You can do whatever you want. You can find a role that's for you, guaranteed. But yeah, so my current role right now, and I've got some business cards for those of you here, feel free to take one and reach out to me if you ever have any questions. My current role is the term is it's branch admin manager. So we have our branch managers across the city. We've got, I guess, 2 head branch managers in Manhattan. And then below them, we kind of have like 3 sub branch managers. But my job as a branch manager is to branch admin manager is to support the financial advisors and to support their team staff. So I'll give you a quick hierarchy of like how a financial advisor team works, and then that'll make a little bit more sense as to what my role is. So as a financial advisor, right, imagine the financial advisors at the top of the pyramid, if we were to have an imaginary pyramid. Below the financial advisors, we usually have, some advisors will have something called a team business manager, right? If the team is large, they'll have a team business manager that's essentially runs their day-to-day operations. But if they don't, they will generally have what's called a SWISA under the financial advisor. So that term, SWISA, SWSA, it's what UBS calls it. Other firms will call it something different, but it stands for Senior Wealth Strategy Associate. The SWISA is, every team can use a SWISA differently, right? So on one team, a SWISA could just run financial plans all day, and on another team, a SWISA could run client meetings. So the terms are loosely used, but a SWISA is usually right below the advisor. They help run portfolios. They help do research on certain stocks or certain positions. They help rebalance portfolios. They'll run client meetings. They'll present client meetings. They'll put together performance reports, right? A SWISA could do anything. Below the SWISA, you'll generally have what's called the WISA. So WSA, which is Wealth Strategy Associate. That's what we refer to it as. Again, other firms could be different. The Wealth Strategy Associate is somewhere in between. I'll explain the role below it, and then I'll explain how that makes sense. But below the WISA will be the Client Service Associate, right? That's generally the service style role. That's where you usually get your foot in the door. That's where you're going to usually get licensed. You're going to learn the business. You're going to learn how to speak to clients. You're going to learn the systems, learn how to service accounts, how to open accounts, right? That's where the basics are learned as a CSA. Now, the WISA, WSA, that's somewhere between the CSA and the SWISA, right? That's where you're you're an experienced CSA, maybe 2, 3, 4 years in, you're fully licensed, you've really got a good foundation. And now you want to start pursuing something maybe more towards the investment side of the business. You want to start to step away from service. You want to get involved in planning. You want to get involved in rebalancing, or you want to start to maybe prospect and bring business in. That's where you'll step into that WSA role. One thing I think it's very important to note is just because you're in a SWISA role or a WISA role does not mean you're any better than a CSA, right? Some people don't like to prospect. Some people don't care to be a financial advisor. Some people don't have the personality, or they just don't want that for them, right? Some people are comfortable being in a service role, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because if every CSA in the world decided to quit, what do you think would happen to the financial advisor, right? They wouldn't be able to focus on prospecting and bringing in business and building new relationships, right? So everybody on that team, just because I explain it in a pyramid, doesn't mean the people on the bottom are any less important than the people on the quote unquote top of the pyramid, because if it wasn't for the CSAs and the WISAs, the advisor can't focus on growing business and they'll be stuck doing service all day. So that's kind of the pyramid as to how the team works. Again, the CSAs usually handle the service. The wealth strategy associates will handle a balance. Maybe instead of, think of a CSA doing 100% service, a WSA will maybe do 70-30 service to investments. And then a SWISA is probably 70-30 the other way, investments to service. And when you're a financial advisor, you're supposed to be prospecting, building relationships, networking, finding clients, and bringing money into the firm. That's the number one really goal of a financial advisor. So we've got roughly 20 minutes or so. I'm getting a little sick of hearing myself talk. I'm sure you guys are as well. So yes, seriously guys, Zoom, in person, like ask any questions. And again, we don't need more than really 5 or 10 minutes at the end, I think, to look at the portfolio. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, can you talk more about the work-life balance? Say when you started off, was temporal.
Yep.
You almost have a life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So starting at that time, what was your average work
per
week to, as you went up the ladder? You said you've gone 5 positions. Has that changed? How was it?
Yeah, it's funny you actually asked that, because I think it started off, and I'll go to it. Started off with like all work, no life. Got really got to a point where I was at a great, maybe half and half. And then now we're back at like all work, no life, but that's okay. So when I started, it was probably 90% work. I think I'm a little bit like crazy. So what happened, like right when I got hired and I knew my job was quite literally on the line. And if I don't pass these tests, I have no job. So I made it a point to just completely pretty much turn off like everything in my life. Like I stopped going to the gym, which is something very important to me. Like I take health and fitness like super seriously. I pretty much stopped going to the gym. I pretty much stopped like hanging out with my girlfriend at the time. Like, I mean, saw her maybe once a week, if that. My schedule was, right, so I'm born and raised in Staten Island. I was working in Weehawken. So I was getting the 5:30 bus from Staten Island, getting into Weehawken for around 7 a.m. or so, 6:45 if I got lucky. I would study from 6:45, call it, to 8:30 when my job started. So an hour and a half, 2 hours of study. So I'd get maybe call it 2 hours before work. I would work. I would have an hour lunch break where I would study for an hour on lunch. And then work would finish at 5:30, and I would study like 5:30 to 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever, and then go back and then take the bus home and get home at 10 o'clock, shower, get ready for work the next day, and it's 11 o'clock, right? And do it all over again. So at the start, no balance at all. It was all work. I think it's, to some people that sounds ridiculous, and it's like, why would you ever do that? But to me, it was like I said, quite literally my job on the line. One of the biggest issues that I saw 2 years ago when I was a training manager and I was responsible for hiring and training new hires, were people that didn't take the test seriously. We hired, I want to say, in 2022, I think we hired 120 people. I don't know why that number is coming. I think that was a number. I think we had close to like an 80% fail rate of people that failed out and got fired. because they didn't pass all 3 exams. We gave them 6 months to pass, and they didn't pass. So maybe you got the SIE and the 7, you failed the 66, or you got the SIE and you failed the 7, whatever it is. You have 180 days, you can take this Series 7 3 times. Or if you fail it, you just have to wait 30 days to retake it. So that means they failed something like 2 or 3 times, fired. Again, I don't consider myself to be smarter than the average person at all. I passed all the exams. I think it's just making sacrifices of like, I was at my girlfriend's holiday party. Her family has like a big Christmas party. I was like standing in the corner with my phone and I was like doing practice questions for the Series 7. You just have to be obsessed with it. So when I started, I had no life. When I became a financial advisor, the work-life balance was pretty solid. You get in at, I got in, I'm always an early person. So I got in maybe 7:30, clean out emails, do some reading, and then work finished 5:30 and go home. You don't really think about it much after that. Now that I'm in a management position and I'm in the Manhattan market, it's like, there's always something to be done. So it's hard, like especially email on my phone. I never had email on my phone until recently. And it's like the worst thing ever for you, because if I get an email at 8 p.m. and I'm laying in bed or whatever, like I'm going to answer it. So it's a little bit harder now, but it's like a more serious position to where like, I don't know, I enjoy it. So I don't really mind it. It's not like I can't enjoy life. Like, I think it's important to make sure that you still focus on the things that you care. Like, I'll still go to the gym. Maybe I'll answer emails at the gym or whatever it is. I'll go golfing. I can answer a phone call or answer emails at golf. So I think it started off terribly, got a lot better. And right now I'm kind of like 50-50. I'd say it's not bad right now.
One last question.
Yeah, of course. No, ask as many as you want. All good.
When you joined UBS and you've been there 7 years, what is it that you could have, your school could have taught you that would have helped?
Oh, that's a great question. This is not a knock to my school, by the way. I love my school that I went to, Mount St. Vincent, small little school in the Bronx. I went there to play lacrosse. I personally, and I think people who went to larger schools and have more structured business programs, I personally don't think I learned like a single thing in college that helped me in my actual day-to-day job. That's from the like academic standpoint. I also, to be completely fair to Mount St. Vincent, I don't think I put the work in, and I don't think I focused as much on certain, like when I look back on it, there's a handful of classes that I think I'm like, shit, I really wish I paid a lot more attention to those classes. Like whether it's corporate finance or like, doing bond evaluations and doing like the EBITDA stuff. And like those things, I was like, oh, I'm never going to use this. And like, I get to the shop, I'm like, shit, here we go. Like I could have totally used this 5 years ago. So to be completely fair, I did not pay attention as much as I would have. I wish I would have taken my finance classes, like my actual major finance classes. I wish I would have taken them way more serious. But I think overall, like what college taught me is how to, I personally was never like a big studier. So when I got to school and like when I was in college, I had to like really figure out a way to structure study programs, to like set goals, and like, right, you get the syllabus and you see all these things that are going to happen over the semester. And it was more of like life skills I learned than actual academic skills. A piece of advice I would give to any of you is that if you do plan to work in finance, and again, some of you might not plan to work in finance, so this doesn't apply to you, take the SIE as soon as you can possibly take it, so that when you apply to jobs, you already have the SIE on your resume. You are going to stand out 100 times more than people who don't have the SIE. It's an exam you can self-sponsor for. I think it costs $80 to take it. I never had to take it. I took the full Series 7. So the SIE is kind of the 7 broken up into 2. I understand that it's a relatively easy test. People I know have studied for 2 or 3 weeks and passed it. The Series 7 is the more of a beast of a test. You have to be sponsored for that. But yeah, I would say take the SIE right away. And another thing that just came to mind as well, piece of advice for anyone in here and on this call, when you go to an interview, whether it's on Zoom or in person, wear a suit and tie. That art has been lost. When I interview people and they're wearing like a white t-shirt or like a golf polo, it drives me absolutely insane. And that could just be me. That could just be me going crazy. I totally get that. I know I'm not all there, but wear a suit and tie. Even if it says business casual, wear a suit and tie. You want to be someone like, and this this next statement applies for both men and women. You would always want to be overdressed. I love that, like, in the office, I'm always known as like the overdressed guy. I would much rather that title than being the guy who's underdressed. You can only make one first impression. Like, if I'm going on an interview or if I'm interviewing someone and they're the nicest person, they are great as a candidate, I'm not gonna not promote them through the interview process just because they wore a golf polo. But like, that stuff sticks with people. And I know many senior leaders in the Manhattan market that won't even give you the time of day if you were to jump on a Zoom call wearing a golf polo. So if you're doing an interview, whether it's through Zoom, whether it's in person, like, wear a white or a blue, a plain colored shirt, wear a blazer if you're on Zoom. When I do Zoom interviews, by the way, I wear a full suit because I'm ready. I prepare for everything. Like, I think of worst case scenario, I think of someone saying, hey, like, do me a favor and stand up. So I put on down to the shoes. I got my dress shoes on, my belt, suit, tie. I'm ready for someone to stand up and ask me to, I'll show you my feet. I got the shoes laced up. I'm ready to go. But yes, like that's been an art that I think has gotten lost through COVID of just like professional etiquette. Like, clean yourself up a little bit, wear a white or blue shirt, wear a tie, wear a suit, make sure your clothes are ironed or steamed or whatever it is, shave for the interview, make good eye contact, like, don't be chewing gum, have a good professional presence, things like that. Like, people think aren't taken seriously, like, that will make you stand out lifetime more than other people and get the SIE exam. Any other questions? Anything else? Don't be shy. Mm-hmm.
The impact of artificial intelligence, robo-advising, you heard talk around the office of FAs?
Yeah.
Are they at all concerned about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to the latter part of the question, I don't think FAs are concerned, because when people are talking about their money, people need face-to-face. Like, no robot can replace that. So maybe it does carve away a small part of the business for like smaller clients and like the younger generation who's going to throw $10,000 into Robinhood and like let it manage itself. But when you sit down with somebody who has $1 billion, $500 million, $200 million, like, they need that face-to-face relationship. They need to know that there's somebody they can call and they can go to and somebody they trust. Like, trust is the biggest part of like financial advising relationships. So I don't think advisors are worried, maybe just yet. First part of the question, I have seen an impact. So actually in the Wealth Advice Center, one of the main strategies that is, so when you think of the term selling in wealth management, it's selling, like I said earlier, like management, selling someone, let me wrap your assets and take care of it for you. One of the biggest programs that we sell in the Wealth Advice Center, we sold $1 billion of it last year, is called Advice Portfolio. And it's quite literally that, it's a robo-advisor. So a client will go through a questionnaire online. They'll answer 10 questions, right? It's situational, right? If you were to be offered the chance to take $10,000 guaranteed, or the chance to lose it all but get rewarded $50,000, what would you do? Questions like that. And based off the client's answers, it will give them a risk profile. So say, hey, you're 10+ time horizon, you're moderately aggressive. Here's a portfolio for you. Right? Your 3 to 6 year time horizon, you're moderately conservative, here's a portfolio for you. So it's really cool to see. Just again, like, a client goes through some questions and they have a recommended portfolio with ETFs, 6 to 10 ETFs that are tailored to them. So it definitely has made an impact. But I don't think, at least in our lifetime, hopefully, because I don't know what I'll be doing for work, but hopefully not in our lifetime, I don't think it'll like put advisors out of a job.
Just to add to what you said. So what they are doing is that they have recorded all the calls that we talked about, Medicaid business that they don't get. So they put all the calls where they were successful in getting business through an AI machine. And then now they're coming up with scripts for people like Matt.
That's awesome.
So what worked, right? And what doesn't work. So these are the 4 or 5 things that work. So give the script so that they can.
That's great. Yeah, it's definitely going to make an impact on the industry. I think it'll be a positive impact more than anything, because I think it should help with some things that are maybe more labor intensive for like the smaller client segment, right? And that's not downplaying the smaller client segment, but a client who has $100,000 is typically less needy than a client who has $1 billion, right? They're just less complex. They will be okay with a 10 ETF portfolio that's just, hey, stick 100 grand in this portfolio, let it sit. It's going to mirror the S&P. It'll go up and down with the S&P and you'll be fine. Whereas we're a client with $100 million who needs, right, bond ladders and hedge funds and structured products, like all these different, more complex investments, like you can't just stick them into a robo-advisor. So I think it'll help. Hopefully not put me out of a job though. So, awesome. Any questions on Zoom? I think, can you pull up yeah, so I mean, like, this will only be a quick minute. Honestly, I think you guys are doing a great job with your portfolio. It's funny because so when I was in, I think freshman and sophomore year of college, we had something called, we used like Think or Swim, I think it's like through the TD Ameritrade. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I just like bought a leveraged ETF, and my account pretty much just like crapped the bed over 6 months. I just completely took a risk. But it's like, it's awesome to see you guys taking this extremely serious and having a great portfolio. I mean, what your return is 15%, like you said, and that's since June of 2022. So the S&P has, if you look at S&P returns, it's gone crazy, especially since this portfolio was built. But I think for those of you who like keep up with the markets, there's the Mag 7 that's always talked about is responsible for, it's just a significant part of the S&P return. So, and I mean, I think you have a lot of great companies in here. So right now, from a UBS research standpoint, we love AI, we love technology, we love industrials. So the one thing I would say that's on here that we don't love is financials, which is pretty heavily weighted in the portfolio. I don't think it's, again, right, what I told you, Jack, is there's no perfect portfolio. You can get a portfolio manager from JP Morgan, from UBS, from Goldman Sachs, and from Morgan Stanley, and show them all the exact same portfolio, and someone can rip it apart in every way and talk crap about it or say this is great. So there's no perfect portfolio. I think you guys are extremely well diversified. Like, look at the sectors over there on the right. UBS, what we do love right now, particularly real estate, energy, I know utilities, like these are three that we're more preferred in our research, not as preferred for financials. But I mean, overall, I see, again, and I see you have some REITs in here as well, which is great. I didn't even know what a REIT was when I was in college. I probably didn't know what a REIT was until I started studying for the Series 7. But overall, I think you're all in, like your thought process is in the right place. I'm going to throw one little thing at you and say this. If you were to ask me like, oh, how does this portfolio look? I can't give you an answer to that until I ask follow-up questions, right? Because if you were to say, this is a portfolio for a Nancy who is going to retire in 2 years, and this is her life savings, then I would say this is terrible. Right? If you were to say this is a portfolio for Matt, who's 28 years old and is not going to retire for the next 40 years, then you could say it's great, right? I think a big part of making sure like whether a portfolio is good or not good, and I'll put that in air quotes, is there's so much more that goes into it than just the investments in the portfolio, right? As an advisor, you'll learn to know, right? You have to ask, does this client have $10 million, right? Is this everything that a client has? Or is this a small piece of their financial puzzle, right? What's their tolerance for risk? If a client opens their online app and they see their accounts down 30%, are they going to be okay with that? Some clients are totally fine with that, and some clients will dump more money in, which they should, and some clients will almost throw up and want to sell everything when they see it down, right? I was still a financial advisor at the start of COVID. I was more of a therapist than a financial advisor. All day, literally all day, clients would call me and say, Matt, I can't see this. I can't bear to see my account. I'm down 30% in 3 months. Sell everything that's in the account. And I would just have to talk to them and say, hey, like let's take this down. Let's relax for a minute, right? You and I spoke a year ago. I just want to recap that conversation, right? You told me that you're 44 years old. You and your wife are both working, right? You have a joint income of $500,000. Your cash flow is you bring in $20,000 a month and your expenses are $5,000 a month, right? So you're $15,000 a month cash flow positive. You have $500K at Schwab, you have $500K at Morgan Stanley, you have $300K in cash, and you have 3 investment properties. Like, this money here is nothing to your overall portfolio, right? Like, this is just a piece of it. Obviously, we don't want to see this go to zero, but you're not, you told me 6 months ago, you told me a year ago, you told me 2 years ago, that you're not touching this money for 20 years. Like, we're going to have 5 more of these happen, right? Like, you're going to have 5 more recessions. You're going to have this happen all over again 5 more times. So like a big part of being an advisor is just really, like, number one, being a therapist for a client, but understanding like their real financial picture and understanding what their needs are. Because like I said, going back to this portfolio, right? If you told me, if you said, hey, Matt, what do you think about this portfolio? Like, yes, I can at a glance, I can say it's diversified. I can say you have all these different sectors, 15% return in what, a year and a half, almost 2 years, which is totally fine, right? The average return is, depends on a portfolio, an aggressive portfolio, maybe 8 or 9% a year. So you're doing great, way better than I was doing at this age. But I would say that there are so many things that have to go into whether or not, like, if you told me, hey, we're using this money in a year to fund a new renovation to the business center, right? We're going to build a mock stock market here. I would say you guys are absolutely out of your minds if you're using this in a year, right? This should be stuck into a money market fund or a high yield savings fund. But again, if you told me, hey, we're not touching this money for 10 years, for 20 years, totally fine. No issues with it. But yes, a short answer to this, I think from a UBS standpoint as to what we love right now, we really like real estate, energy, utilities are 3 things we're leaning a little bit towards, leaning less towards financials, which you guys have a comfortable amount sitting in right now, but there's nothing wrong with that. Again, you learn, you do research, and you are all in a great place if this is something that you are concerning yourself with. Yeah, when I was in college, I was just worried maybe too much about like partying and when the next event was. But this is awesome. This is awesome to see you guys here. But I know we're up on time. Any questions? Again, feel free. Anyone on the Zoom, anyone in person, feel free to throw questions out there. Jack has my email. So if any of you want to email me after this and follow up, have any questions, or if you're just looking for some advice, I'll leave you with this. When I graduated, I had not a single speck of a connection in the financial industry. I didn't know one single person. I didn't know where to start. My mom is a secretary at a high school. I don't know a single person in the industry. I fired off my resume to 1 million people. I spoke to every single person that would give me the time of day to speak to them. I got extremely lucky in that a woman who works, one of the teachers in my mom's school, had happened to ask her, hey, like, how's the job search going for Matt? And she said, oh, he's just striking out everywhere. And she's like, oh, my husband works at UBS. He could help him get an interview. Right? That's it. That's all you guys need. Nobody's going to be able to get you a job. The hardest part is just going to be getting the interview, and the rest is up for you. Or up to you, should I say. So this guy who never met me, I could have been some snot-nosed college kid. He spent an hour talking to me on the phone one night. I told him what I wanted to do. I told him what I was interested in. He recommended the Wealth Advice Center to me, which is what I spent the first 20 minutes talking about. And that was it, right? It's all about, it really truly is like about who you know. It's about people you meet. Like, vocalize to everybody that you meet that you're in finance, that you're looking for a job, that you just graduated, that you're open to learn. Look for good internships. UBS does not have any internships available right now, unfortunately. The Wealth Advice Center would be the closest thing to an internship, which is really a job. But if you guys cannot get any good internships, 2 things I recommend are caddying at a golf club over the summer. Because think about the demographic of people who play at country clubs, right? So find a nice country club, see if they have any caddy slots available, and working at a nice restaurant, bussing tables, being a waiter, waitress. Some of the best people I've ever interviewed have a extensive background in the service industry, whether it's working at Chick-fil-A, working at nice restaurants, being a waiter, being a waitress. Like this one guy was ashamed to tell me he worked at Chick-fil-A. He was one of the best people I ever interviewed because he worked there for like 7 years. And just it's a service job, right? So it doesn't seem like it relates to finance, but you can be taught finance, right? We can teach you how to sell. We can teach you how to read a portfolio. We can teach you certain things to look for. I cannot teach you to build trust. I can't teach you to be a people's person. I can't really teach you to be outgoing. That's something that comes a little bit more natural. So finance can be taught. The rest of it is just networking and being outgoing, be willing to learn. But that's all I have. I hope this was any bit useful for you all. Again, feel free to ask questions. Jack can shoot my email around to all of you if some of you are too shy to ask it over Zoom. But I thank you all for hanging out here for an hour on this crappy day, nothing but rain. So maybe you guys have nothing better to do. So, but yeah, appreciate you all. Thank you all for your time. Of course.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you
So
so
some-
much.
Just some reminders for our BAP members. Today is the last day for applications. So if anyone does want to become a BAP candidate this semester, please see one of us e-board members for an application. And then if anybody is interested in if anyone's graduating from BAP this semester, you want to buy a stole or cord, please see one of us. We'll give you the details on that. But yeah, meeting next week, same time, same place. And then, yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.